What we tend to do is go through and kind of look at some different kind of titles and try and unpack the content. So for today, we're going to be looking at understanding your baseline and the target, really how to upscale, thinking about some of the approaches to take. As always, we will try and highlight some additional resources that can help you on that retrofit journey. So it doesn't matter if you've been in your role 20 years, 2 weeks, or it's your second day in your role. There'll be some things that you can absolutely take home. This is to really think about you in your current role, or you're about to partake in a retrofit project. Really think about kind of what is the largest thing you've done in terms of a retrofit project. Now, for some people, that might be 10 units because you maybe work for a small organization and your portfolio isn't that big. It might be that you work for a really large registered provider with, hundreds of, thousands of properties in your portfolio. So have a think about what is the largest scale retrofit project you've done so far. It might be that you have done some really large projects years ago. So feel free to pop those in. And then I want everyone to start to think about what your challenges were that you faced in terms of that. So really starting to think, was it about thinking about the technology? Was it about planning permission? Was it about really getting some really great resident engagement? Was it about communications? Was it about getting the supplies of external wall insulation? Was the challenge COVID-19 challenge? Really think about what your biggest challenge was. And then I really want us to start to think about kind of how effective the project was. And then think about how effective this project was. Were you getting to EPCC? Were you addressing challenges around fuel poverty? Were you decarbonising an estate? So were you trying to get off fuel that came from a fossil fuel, so maybe a gas-based system, and you were moving it to electrical, and you had some self-generation in there as well? In terms of what was your largest retrofit project you've done, it might have been 5 properties, it might have been 500. So start to have a think about that. So while we're thinking about that, in terms of where we might start from right now, it's really important to understand exactly where you are. And it might not be where you want to be right now. It might be, a place you're starting from a real kind of fresh place. It might be that you're starting from halfway through. It might be that it's a phased project over a number of years. So really have a think about in terms of understanding what is your target that you're trying to aim for. So we bring forward some ideas around where are you now? And I touched on this just a little bit earlier about the kind of the amount of stock that you have. Lots of different organizations have above 100 properties, lots have below 100. So really think about, where you are. Think about the energy performance certificates of that stock. Do you have full coverage of an energy performance certificate, or do you need to do some stock condition surveys? Linking into tenure as well. Property construction types, absolutely, we need to understand what those are. Thinking about some constraints, I mentioned planning before, listed building consent as well. Also, it might be around understanding fuel poverty levels or housing requirement levels. The how we'll get there is about what do we want to be doing? It's about what do we want to be targeting? What factors are going to be really important to you? Is it about area based? Is it around ensuring that you get funding for this? Are there particular milestones and KPIs, so key performance indicators, that you need to use to monitor that progress? And what is the risk can you identify around what that success might look like? And what are some of those risks? Is it about procuring contractors? Is it around engaging the local community? Will you outsource some of this as well? And where do you want to be? It's linking back to understanding where you are now, but where do you want to get to? It's a journey. How are we thinking about, getting to those particular places? But absolutely thinking about where do you want to be, that well-being around fuel security, off gas, upskilling, so local workforce, employment, supporting school leavers. It might be around health. It might be around damp and mold. Where do you want to be is really, really important. thinking about that baseline and in particular net zero. So if we're really thinking about getting to a zero carbon level, retrofitting is about reducing the amount of energy that we need to utilize in that home to it to be something that is functional and is useful for the occupants of that space. All of us on this call will have different requirements. Some of us will work from home, so we will need electricity in the day. We will do maybe cook our lunch. We might have caring responsibilities. We might have certain medical needs that need to have electrical supply or a power supply associated with it. We might have particularly old people in our home. We might have particularly young people. So really thinking about all of those different needs. Breaking it down slightly in terms of understanding what your project baseline looks like. Again, coming back to the energy performance certificate, the construction types and attachment types as well. So here we're thinking about, is it a row of terraces? Is it detached? Is it a series of bungalows? Is it high rise? Is it low rise? Are there connectivities between those different properties? Also thinking about tenure. We know that a lot of homes and streets will have mixed tenure. There will be some that are private rented, some that will be private owned. There might be homes that are still in council ownership or a registered provider. So understanding that's going to be really important. The on and off gas situation. So is the community, is the property already in an off gas, kind of connectivity? This might be due to rurality. It might be due to historical connectivity. There are other things to think about here, as well as kind of listed buildings, indexes of multiple deprivation, so IMD, really powerful data. If you're not aware of those already, I'd really strongly recommend using a search engine afterwards and finding the link to get that and seeing for your retrofit project what that means. If we think about it in terms of zero carbon, net carbon, getting carbon understanding into our project, we're talking about some of the kind of right-hand things that we'll be focusing on. So jobs I've mentioned already, cheaper energy bills, absolutely. Everyone wants to be paying less than they are at the moment. So how do we do that? Tenant comfort and happiness. I think this is really important. All of us, again, on this call will be experiencing a different level of thermal comfort right now while we're on this session. Some of us will have multiple layers. Some of us might have blankets on. We all have a different level of thermal comfort. We are all human and we all have that different need. So understanding tenants and their level of thermal comfort will be really important. Thinking about people who don't necessarily engage with organisations as well. How do we entice them into being part of a retrofit project and make that improvement to their home? Engaging communities, and absolutely around the literacy around carbon, around climate change, so we understand what it means, what it's going to mean for us, and how a retrofit project can really nicely align into that. Absolutely. Don't worry if you're new to retrofit. We know that actually we're seeing this a lot in terms of lots of people coming in and being new to things. But absolutely, lots of different factors will come into play. And it will also depend on your organisation as well. If you are based in a local authority, it might be very different to if you are a private landlord, to if you are in a house, for example, or if you are in a really large registered provider. So the more we share, the more we learn about how actually we're all kind of in this retrofit industry together. We're just trying to make things better for people in their homes. And I think that's the real commonality we've got to it. So if we have a little bit of a deeper dive and kind of have a look at it in terms of what this actually might mean. And so when we talk about baselining targets, aligning to zero carbon, enabling retrofit at scale, we really need to understand what our picture looks like. So here we have some examples. We've got some photographs and we've got some pie charts. The first thing that this organisation have done is really think about, okay, well, where are APCs? So they have this information for most of their properties. And hopefully you can see on the pie chart that the majority are in the kind of D, so over 4,000. E is then over 5,000. We've then got some F and some Gs as well. So what you're wanting to think about is, okay, well, this is our baseline. This is where we are. Okay, we want to get above C. Okay, there's a lot of properties there that are under C. How are we going to get these above sea and really kind of improve the energy usage in those properties, decarbonize, improve performance, embrace thermal comfort for those tenants? So it's understanding, okay, well, what does that look like? So then we delve a little bit deeper, in those property types, what actually are we looking for? And hopefully you can see that for this example, almost 3/4 are a house. So understanding that the predominance in this situation is that we are dealing with houses. We're not dealing with high rise. We're not dealing with, a lot of park homes, a lot of bungalows. We're looking at houses. So again, it's thinking, okay, well, we've got a lot that are under D or C and below. So a lot of D, a lot of E, and a lot of F. It's then saying actually a lot of these are houses. But then let's have a look at what type of house this is, the built form. So we can see that then we've got a lot of enclosed mid-terraced, enclosed end terraces. So straight away, the word terrace is coming out quite strongly. And hopefully from the middle picture, you can see kind of very typical type in the Cotswolds of a row of terraces. So understanding that actually we've got a lot of properties we need to elevate to an EPCC. We know that a lot of them are houses and a lot of them are either the end or they are the kind of enclosed terrace. So that helps us really inform what comes next. If you haven't got the data for your properties, it's a really good suggestion to go and get that data, to understand what it looks like and to do a similar exercise, because what we're wanting to do is retrofit at scale. We want to be able to bring forward these numbers. So if we look at it, we know that we've got over 10,000 houses and we've got over 5,000 that are enclosed and over 4,000 that are end terraces. Those are big numbers for us to deal with. We're retrofitting and wanting to retrofit at scale. So those are being really highlighted to us. When we're wanting to do that kind of upscale, we're wanting to do, really big numbers to really elevate those people, those houses, those homes, and really make some differences. It's about a journey. Absolutely, there are lots of things that will come into play that will facilitate that success. So things like installer capacity and capability. It's things about people being in roles around retrofit, their capability and their capacity. Because when we're doing it at scale, it's not just about people being able to do it. It's about being able to do it in the time frame that we want people to do. It's also around those other colleagues that might not traditionally sit in a retrofit project. So customer service, absolutely. Calls in particular, face-to-face meetings, those will all be things that need to be facilitated to enable our project to be successful. And absolutely our project team, we really need to be thinking about them and who we're bringing into that team. Who's going to be the specialist? What new people do we need? What people who we've maybe worked on with before? Are they internal? Are they external? All along we're thinking about are these in budget? Do we have buy-in? The appetite for customers. And this might apply more for the kind of private owner occupier or private rented and therefore the private landlords to engage with. But it's thinking about the appetite, the interest for that person, that resident, that occupant to be engaged in retrofit. And what we have to sometimes do is dispel the negativity that might exist to engage and kind of excite that appetite for that customer and that resident. We also need to think about the number of measures to elevate us to EPCC. Is it going to be one or two? Is it going to be whole house? We have lots of other masterclasses that kind of delve a little bit deeper into that. And also the area approach. Is it a particular estate? Is it a street? Is it a postcode? Really think about how that might come into play. When we think about it in terms of the ability to get something installed, we want to think about the capacity of being able to do that. So what we're thinking about is you might have more than one installer, you might just have one. They might have multiple teams that are going to work around your project. So really think about it in terms of what's going to matter to you and to your outcome. So this is just an example, but it's thinking about, okay, well, actually, what's going to be really important to us here? local apprenticeships. That might be something that it's really important to you and your community. So, how many opportunities might that be? Within a 50-mile radius, again, the radius will depend on your project, your locality. Are you urban? Are you rural? Coastal also is important here, because you're not necessarily going to have that radius going into the sea to enable that. So really, really be mindful of your geographical setting. That customer service rating, you might have experience from previously using them, and how does that fit in, as well as a capacity to install measures and certain number of homes. So if we're trying to do at scale and upscale of number of properties we're doing, this is really important to understand and to really think about it in terms of how many numbers can we do. And this is thinking about holidays, school holidays, availability of materials, sign-ups. There's a whole number of things that go into thinking about this number. So it might be that we want to think about it in doing successful batches. We might want to phase it. We might want to avoid key events that might be going on. So things like, if there is a particular festival or a particular celebration that takes place, let's be really mindful about avoiding those to not lead to a negative impact on our program. So this is just an example. It's looking at kind of last summer, thinking about it in terms of, batch 1 is going to be 20 properties, cavity wall installation, solar PV and loft insulation. We've got this then cascading into the different batches in different months. Again, depending on what your project is, you might have different measures, you might have different numbers, but it's about enabling that at scale production of installations to enable that to come through. Thinking about it in terms of retrofit roles, it's then really thinking about it in terms of who can actually do this, who can facilitate this to enable those batches of installs. So we'll need to have a survey, and we'll need to understand the details, the nuances of the properties. So making sure that we are allowing enough time for these to take place to enable those installs to also take place. So that's what this table is trying to show, is that they've allowed a 3 months previous to have the surveys undertaken to then allow those installs in June and July. Again, depending on how you work and how you're prioritizing your time, you might want to shorten this time scale, you might want to lengthen it. When we think about it in terms of people, I think it's really important to understand that everyone is different, and everyone will have a number of questions, queries, challenges, stresses, negative thoughts, positive thoughts. It's making sure that the kind of awareness and support for that customer is really being embedded into your upscaling of the numbers of properties that you're doing. So it's thinking about it, okay, well, what we need to do is make sure that we are advertising things, that we are signing people up, that we're doing the survey, that we're doing the install, we're looking at it afterwards, and then we're monitoring and evaluating it. So anyone familiar with retrofit will be hopefully aware of PAS 2035, PAS 2030, making sure that we're aligning our requirements into that as a compliance requirement, but also being really honest and saying, actually, do we have the skills? Do we have the availability of people to make sure that everything we need to do in the kind of customer journey, the handling of people, and this is about, really supporting people, making sure that we have that availability. So again, this is a way of tracking it to then enable us to really at scale create a pathway to get more numbers of retrofits undertaken and successfully undertaken, both in terms of the number of installs, but also that well-being of the customer. So it's thinking about, are we doing a tick in here, or do we need to kind of work on that? It's also thinking about it in terms of that availability of being able to do that. So it's thinking about, where do we put people to be able to do that? So again, thinking about the install process when we are installing the measures. So this might be external wall insulation, it might be PV on the roof. Going back to our kind of analysis of the baseline, If we are a terrace, that's a lot of roof space to kind of do things. Hopefully we can kind of do that at scale and kind of get the job done correctly, safely, and to a quality level, but making sure that we're going to be doing that. So here we are, we're thinking about the numbers that we can do in each month. We're thinking about how are we going to track this. We're thinking about it in terms of that post-completion monitoring and evaluation. How are we going to be doing this? And again, trackers like this, will be a live document. There will be something that is updated, and it's making sure that it's suitable and appropriate for our project that we're doing. Now, I touched on project team capability earlier, really thinking about those key roles. Again, going back to PAS 2035 and PAS 2030 for the installers who are going to get to do the work. It's making sure that we understand what is required, what's included, and understanding actually, let's say, where we are in this. Do we have the skills? Do we have capability? Do we have capacity as well? How much is this going to cost us? And if we need to outsource, how much is it going to cost us to outsource? So doing this kind of process is really going to help us understand that when we are doing at scale retrofits, we really need to be thinking about this much more strategically to enable that success in our project. So when we're thinking about it in different ways, because sometimes we need to think about doing something different, think about it in doing it different to how we did it before. It might have worked really well before, so we're going to continue that on. We're going to build on that. We're going to build some momentum in it. But it's understanding actually about building staff capability, and is this something we can do internally? We can grow our team, we can support people to elevate themselves to new measures, or is it something we need to outsource? This is just outlining some of the pros and cons. You can probably think of some more on the call in terms of the challenges, shall we say, around doing this. So really think about it in terms of control. Where do you want that control to sit? It might be around getting that compliance. So you might not have that ability in your organization. So therefore, a real pro is about kind of you're paying for that standard to be met, particularly with funded programs and PAS. But then building up skills in your team, that's going to create long-term benefits, supporting people in your team to elevate themselves, to work through different skill sets, to really enable that at scale development of colleagues to then see real benefit in the number of units that you're able to do. When we're thinking about it as well, it's thinking about it in a cost benefit perspective. Absolutely, cost is going to come into play, so we're not going to ignore it. We're going to think about it in terms of where are we best spending our money to enable our retrofit project to take place, to enable our project to be successful, to then learn and at scale be able to really ramp up the numbers that we can do. So it's thinking about it in terms of project management, procurement, customer service, and those retrofit roles. So really think about it. You might have worked with previous people on previous projects in different organizations and might think, okay, well, actually, they'd be really great to work with again. Do you then bring them in-house, or do you bring them in as an outsourced person to support a particular project? We've outlined it here in terms of costs of kind of outsourcing and not, but also short-term, medium-term and long-term. Absolutely, we want to be getting those numbers of properties being retrofitted achieved, but also thinking about it in terms of how long is this going to take us to get to where we want to get to. Long term might be up to, post 2030. It might be up to 2050. Whatever that time frame is for your organization, think about it in terms of, do you need to think about it in kind of budgetary years? Do you need to think about it in terms of a 5-year plan? Whatever is appropriate for you and your organization to enable the numbers of retrofitted properties we need to do in this country. This is just an example. There is a bit of a question about kind of what do you recommend this team to do to upscale private sector retrofit delivery. So I'll just talk through it in terms of where they kind of are. The energy kind of retrofit team is 5 full-time members, 2 housing, 3 capital. But then there's also a building and maintenance team. You've got 5 surveyors, 5 senior surveyors, 3 who are compliant, 3 senior managers, 2 technicians, and 7 housing officer members. You have 1,500 homes. We're delivering EcoFlex. You have delivered Wave 2.1. You definitely want to kind of prioritize and deliver more private sector retrofit. You have lots of kind of interesting points to just kind of pull out. So things like the housing project officers they make the referrals. They also do a lot of the bid for funding. We've got NEA, City and Guilds. There are no official project management qualification or retrofit qualifications. You have some things to make sure that you're aware of in terms of the private sector housing team. We've got compliance, we've got MEES, we've got HHSRS. So it's thinking, okay, well, how do we unpack this? How do we move this forward? So if you have any recommendations about how to get this team to kind of upscale private sector retrofit, but it's thinking about, okay, well, what can we do? What capabilities are there to upscale? Do we need to outsource? Do we need to train people up? Do we need to get some more formal qualifications? What about engagement? What about residents? Communication, advertising? Where does that all kind of come in? So a bit of a challenge out to you, but do have a think about that. As we pull everything together, I think there's a couple of key things to really kind of think about. In your organization, you'll absolutely have to think about the pros and the cons of building skills to enable that delivery of more properties. To get us to net zero or zero carbon or a decarbonised estate, whatever terminology you're using, really think about how you're going to do that. Think about where the budget is going to come from. Think about the capabilities you have now. Think about who can do what, whether that is a named job role or the individual. Think about it in terms of, to get to where we need to be, we need X number of more surveyors. We need X number of more installers. We need more retrofit coordinators. We need more tenant liaison officers. We need more communications people or project management. Really think about what that might look like for you. And really start to map out those skills. Map it out for your organization. Map it out for the aspiration of your retrofit project to deliver what you want to be delivering. We know we've got lots of properties that we need to retrofit. So how are you going to be able to do that? And think about it in terms of, I mentioned quite a lot capability, but it's also capacity and filling those holes in terms of where they might exist, or we want to elevate people. And absolutely, that is one of the key things, is about elevating people who already have that knowledge. How are we going to elevate them to enable them to efficiently kind of scale the number of properties that we need to be retrofitting in this country? So hopefully that has taken us on a bit of a journey to kind of think about those things, and definitely being able to kind of retrofit at that scale. As always, I would definitely highlight some further resources to you. So kind of retrofitting blocks of flats, capacity and developing more capacity. And that's a really nice masterclass. Also assembling and managing your team, as well as procurement. All of these are really key things that we need to be kind of pulling forward. So have a look at some of those sessions. That'll be really good. There are also lots of on-demand resources as well to kind of have a think about and look through. In terms of upskilling people, keep an eye out for boot camps, particularly the ones that are CPD accredited. I'm running one in Nottingham at the end of the month. So if you're around Nottingham, please feel free to have a look at that. They are all fully funded through the project. So don't worry about kind of incurring costs for the training. You just have to get yourself there. So have a look for those. If you haven't kind of already subscribed to the newsletter as well, feel free to contact us. Our website is riseretrofit.org.uk, and the email is rise@turntown.co.uk. And if you'd like to reach out to myself, it's claire.brown@turntown.co.uk. Thank you very much.